Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So today, if you are a marketer, I would definitely stop what you're doing, take your lunch break a little bit earlier because we're gonna literally dive into some serious marketing chops today. So we have Kirsty from the other side of the pond coming from UK. And I like to give whoever I'm interviewing with a particular nickname. And I think she's obviously earned the nickname of being the personalization boss, hands down, period. So the floor is yours, Kirsty. I want you to kind of tell the audience a little bit more about you and what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so okay, let me start by telling you a bit about me. I am, as you said, an absolute marketer at heart. So while I run a business, I got into it because of marketing and because I love the really measurable side of marketing where you can see the creative work that you've done actually translate into numbers, so leads, revenue, ROI. And that's why I've ended up in the website personalization space, because there's just a real opportunity there to be able to drive increased revenue to your organization in a really, really measurable way. And I am, I guess, now on the vendor side. So having been client side, been agency side in the past, I'm now vendor side, which I think puts me in a pretty good position because I understand the challenges that each of those face in terms of our customers. And I hope that helps make our product and the customer success services that we provide to our customers better because of it.
So I think that's definitely interesting. And I think on your website, I mean, obviously you guys are kind of, like you said, you're more into like the SaaS side of things, right? It's like you took everything that you've known and you kind of put it into a platform. And one of the things that was very interesting, it was something as simple as when I'm telling clients all the time, you have to have a call of action above the fold. It needs to be the first thing primarily, but you take that even further. I mean, on your page, there was a video that kind of converted a book an appointment to book a demo. So I want you to kind of talk about like that little tweak. How much of a difference can that really make?
Yeah, I think, well, we all know the power of A/B testing. And the smallest change can drive big swings in conversion. I think what really is powerful about that is when you change this ETA to make it more relevant to where that buyer is in the journey. So if they are top of the funnel, obviously, are you going to go straight in for book a demo, or are you going to offer them something to drive them further into that funnel, like a piece of content or something that you know is of interest to them? And again, that's where personalization fits, because you need to surface the right content to that buyer as soon as they hit your website. So that's the first thing, like get them like sticky so they see, okay, this is relevant to me. And then you make the next step relevant to them. And by doing that, we're seeing customers get, on average, an increase of around 135% from a visit to whatever they class as a conversion, which is usually a demo request, a form, that could be, a content download, but something that gets that buyer into the funnel. And the most powerful part is just making it relevant. So identifying that buyer as soon as they hit the website, going, right, we're going to show them this because this is going to make more sense to them. But it's really measurable, which is what I love.
So, I mean, I think one of the keywords you said, it was powerful. So I want you to kind of talk about like how does personalization like really kind of help make a website more powerful than what it really is? I mean, obviously people have products, they have services, they have images, they have call of action, they have all these different things, but what you're really focused on is personalizing. So I want you to kind of dial in on that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So the powerful part is helping the buyer. There is personalization for personalization's sake, and there's what people would class as maybe more creepy personalization, which is, hey, we know you're here, and that's not useful. What makes personalization powerful is when you understand something about your buyer, and you are then showing them what's most important to them quickly and easily, because we're all short in time. And, we don't go on to a B2B website to be entertained. We go on because we have got a goal. we have some insight to find, we are maybe looking to find out more about a particular solution. So if you're the brand that shows the right stuff to that buyer at the right time, you're going to be the one who gets the conversion. And in B2B, it is really challenging because unlike B2C, and you think about the experience that we get in B2C, we go on to Amazon, we go on to Netflix, ASOS, and we're served this really customized, personalized experience. That's what we're used to. And then we go onto a B2B website, and B2B brands do have it tough because there is this traditional view of B2B. We have to be careful what we say, and we've got shareholders, and we really want to talk to business buyers, but we have to remember that we're talking to human beings, and for the most part our websites are there to help those human beings buy more about our product, find out more about our product, maybe be upselled into other parts of our solution. And those human beings have needs and wants, which is save me time, help me get to what I need quicker so I can go and look somewhere else, or I can do my job faster. And that's the power of personalization, is it's helped me. And Gartner talk about that recognition-based personalization versus help-me-based personalization. And, it's up to, 50 times more effective when you help the buyer. You use that data to actually do something useful rather than just, surface their company name as an example.
So I want to kind of talk about like you in your younger days, right? Because I mean, obviously, like you're completely engulfed into what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it. But I want you to kind of talk about like you growing up as a kid. Were you like a kid that was always into like analyzing data or looking at content and regurgitating things that you've learned? What kind of kid were you growing up?
So I would say I was definitely not the kid who was into analyzing data. I think that came later. That's where I really fell in love with marketing. So I was the creative kid. I was the one full of the ideas, and I liked to write. I liked to create content. That was my bag, and that's why I ended up getting into marketing, because I loved the creative side of it. And actually, when I originally got into marketing, I thought that bit would be the bit that excited me most. Doing, coming up with ideas for campaigns, creating content. I do absolutely love all of that side of it. And that's the dreamy, curious side of me. So that was definitely me as a kid. But where I really fell in love with it was the fact that I could see we had the ability to turn those kind of like, oh, what would happen if we did this? And what would happen if we did that? And we changed that into something that would, influence people to do something different, the influencing side of things. And then you can measure that influence. So it's not just, brand perception and how people are thinking about our business. It's because of that, and because of that creativity and that hypothesis that we had and deciding to try something different, we've managed to deliver this much revenue into an organization. So I got the analytical brain a little later than when I was a child, but that was what really kept me sticky and really helped me to move within business, I think, because from a marketing perspective, so many organizations, I think it's less so now, but don't see marketing as a function that should sit on the board that can drive real revenue, and that all sits with sales. Well, my view is totally different based on the career I've had.
Wow. So, I mean, with that, I mean, still on this time travel aspect of it, like, I mean, like, were your parents, like, were they aware that you were kind of like more creative, and did they kind of help influence that? Like, were any of your parents creative?
No. Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. I think my dad was in the forces. He was in the Royal Navy. So it's not really the kind of role that lends itself to creativity. My mum was very creative, but I don't think she had much time for that. When we were young, she was just busy being our mum.
Hmm.
And I do remember the school teacher saying to my parents, because my mom told me not so long ago that I was very good at writing, and particularly writing poetry. But there wasn't much support for poets nowadays. So they probably tried to harness me being more academic.
Hmm.
And because they both had quite traditional jobs, um, there was definitely no entrepreneurial streak in the family. That actually came when I was influenced by people that I worked with who were entrepreneurs, and not from my parents, but what my parents really instilled in me was the value of hard work. And countless times, I can remember being told, like, if you're not gonna do that to the best of your ability, just don't bother at all. Like, always, like, have good work ethic, do your best, and put your all into it. So that has kind of like stood me in good stead from an entrepreneurial perspective, because you just do not give up, and you do always do your
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. So like this fast forward. So now you're a mother of three. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen any of those traits from your younger days being personal to you in Lori, Ruben, or Cleo? Have you seen any of them kind of step into this space to where they could potentially become you down the road?
Yeah, Larry is she's super creative. I mean, both my daughters dance and perform,
Mm.
and Larry loves to write, and she likes to write music. And so, yeah, I definitely see that side of it with Larry. And I think the other thing that she really likes to do is she likes to talk and influence people, which has always been a key part of what I've done. I love to, particularly on like subjects that I know a bit about, like obviously marketing. I love speaking. I love getting in front of an audience. I love giving people something valuable that they can walk away and take into their roles and their organizations. And I would say, yeah, my oldest daughter's definitely got a lot of those traits.
Mm.
Whereas my son he's the analytical one, he's the maths whiz. So yeah, he is more logical and less creative.
Mm.
But probably be creative with numbers later on in life, I can imagine.
Hmm. Hmm. So, I mean, I think that's definitely fascinating, especially since what you do is kind of based on behavioral data, right? So, I want
Mm-hmm.
you to kind of talk about the behavioral data aspect. But I think a lot of people like they don't really comprehend that. They may understand that Facebook is a behavioral platform, and that's why those ads work that well. But again, in marketing and strategy and development, there's behavioral collectively. So, I want you to kind of talk about that from the point of view of a mom versus a business.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, well, okay, so I'm going to start with the business side of things, and then come back to being, so how you do it or how it influences you being a mum. But there are buyers tell us so much about themselves by their behavior. And again, what we can do with that insight is use that behavior to actually make their lives easier.
Mhm.
So thinking about, okay, well, they are here on their journey. So based on the content that they've consumed, where they've spent the most time, what they particularly found useful. And then when they return to the website, for example, or next time we communicate with them, we're going to respond to that behavior, because they have shown us that that is how or that is where they are on their journey. Also, there is definitely something in behavior from how individuals like to be communicated with. I think if you can see the for example, on your website or anything that you're doing, that your buyers are consuming more of a certain type of content. Let's say they're watching video more, or they like to download and consume and read all those big meaty white papers, then that's behavior that you need to pay attention to and you need to respond to, because you just want to make life easy for them. And I think the same applies with kids, is like you learn what works for them and how you can make life easy for them based on how their brain works, what's interesting to them. And as a mum, you're learning that all the time. Like a prime example is how do you get your kids to eat the right things? And I'm trying and testing that with Lowry all the time, because saying, it's like I'll do the usual, you need to eat healthy, rubbish in, rubbish out, all of that kind of stuff, but it's not resonating. And I think then finding that actually showing her other people who are like her saying those things rather than it coming from me really helps. So I think watch what they do and watch what they respond to, and then change how you deliver it the next time. So yeah, does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it kind of leads me into I was leading you down like the storyline pipeline. I mean, as far as like your leadership style, right? I mean, obviously being a mom and being a business owner, and both combinations of those two different hemispheres makes you a really solid leader. I remember reading a post, and it was back in 2020, and it was during the COVID, right? And you have teams in multiple different regions in UK. I think it was like Portugal to UK, and you guys came up with this plan to do daily workout selfies. So, I mean, that kind of, you're leading into that state of mind of behavioral. Like, I mean, everyone's kind of captured, they're not around people, but then that concept came up to kind of influence people to kind of share what they're doing to kind of keep that community. So I want you to kind of talk about the community aspect of marketing and how has that worked for you?
Yeah, so from a community, I mean, I'll talk about two sides of things. I'll talk about it from a leadership perspective first. Obviously COVID was a really, really tough time. For me in particular, I joined or I took on the leadership role within Webeo literally just before COVID hit. So I was building my relationship with a team of people, most of whom I had met once or twice. So community was incredibly important. And I like to think I have a relatively high EQ, but that's much more difficult to use when you're behind a screen. So it was, for me, it was very much around like connecting with everybody in the team individually and understanding like what was important to them, how they were doing, listening to them, and then bringing that together in terms of what we did. So like the workout stuff, we did groups meditation, we did, we just got together a lot more, even though it was behind screens, and that really helped. And what it also did is help create that connection, because which is a really powerful way to motivate people, to show them that everybody was in the same situation. We're all dealing with the same things. We were very open and honest. And I think if you take that into the marketing world, the way I would look at it is, something most similar is social proof. So we like to be like others who are successful or have done it right before. And so the influencer marketing space in B2B, or knowing that other businesses who are like you have done this before and have been successful with it, is really, really powerful. And using things like video and like the podcast and things like that to connect buyers, I think makes such a huge difference, because they get to hear straight from the voice of that individual who's been through all of those things, who had to buy the software, who had to implement it, who had the ups and downs. And it's the authenticity of that, which we didn't have maybe 5 10 years ago, it was like, you've got some case studies of here are all these companies that look like you. Now you get to hear from the companies. Now you watch videos of them. Now you hear them on podcasts, and they're way more honest, which is what you need to hear. You don't want someone telling you, oh yeah, I bought this and I plugged it in, it worked perfectly, because we know that that's not true. What we want to do is hear from people who have said, yeah, we bought this and it's working great now, but we had to deal with this, and this. All of these things got in the way. They held us up. So we had to be aware of that for next time. And here's some things that you can do differently to us that will help you get there faster. And so that connection is almost like a sigh of relief from a buyer's perspective. Is like, okay, I'm going into this with my eyes wide open. It's not perfect, but other businesses that look like me, or individuals who look like me, have done it and they've been successful, but they've given me some tips to ensure that I don't make the same mistakes that they did.
So I think one of the key words that you said in that kind of really brings up to another topic of podcasting. So recently you guys started your own podcast, and I listened to episode 7, which was a very interesting episode. It was conversion secrets for B2B can learn from B2C. And I think you kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, right? So I want you to kind of talk about, like, and I think one of the key words on that episode was like the gap in maturity. I want you to kind of bring that in between the B2B to B2C to kind of explain to the listener the differences between the two, but how they can leverage personalization to make that better for them.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it does go back a lot to what we talked about earlier. There is definitely a chasm between how B2B are focusing on conversion on their website versus B2C, particularly obviously in the e-commerce space, where they're measuring every single micro uplift in conversion, because they're dealing with millions and millions of visitors to their website. So obviously those things can make a small difference. And I think that's one thing to be really, really aware of within B2B versus B2C. Like, in B2B, we can't be the same as our B2C colleagues, because for the most part, we don't have the traffic volumes that they're dealing with. So if we want to do tests and we want to personalize and we want to prove things work, we can't do hundreds and hundreds of multivariate tests, because we just won't have the traffic to do so. But what we can do is start to be agile with our website. And that is one area where in B2B we really fall down. There is this view of, we do a website, it sticks around for a year and a half, then we redo the website. The website should be constantly developing and changing, and it should be agile in terms of talking about stuff that's particularly current for your buyers at the moment, talking about events, talking about stuff that's relevant for them, either based on their industry, where they are in their journey, and it can constantly change. The B2B marketing team doesn't have a great culture of experimentation. There is in B2B as well. I actually remember doing this podcast there. The website comes under control of more than just marketing. For the most part. So it may be that the CEO will have a say, or sales will have a say, which can be quite difficult, because obviously you want to be as agile as possible. Whereas in B2C, the digital team are, they're left to it to experiment, to make mistakes, to try things, because obviously every failure means you learn that's not the right way to do it. And I think we're more afraid of that in B2B. So we don't try, we certainly don't try always the things that are going to give us those big swings in conversion. And as a result, we don't get them. So we're like, oh, we'll just go for this tiny little thing that no one will probably notice. And so there is a bit more, I suppose, fear, and the B2B marketer is a bit more reserved. Where we don't see that is in SaaS. So our software clients that we work with, they're really confident in their experimentation skills, and they want to be experimenting constantly. They see the website as a moving piece of work, which is great, and they're the ones who are getting the results accordingly. Mm-hmm. Other industries are catching up, but it's finding that forward thinking digital marketing function, because I tell you what, in those more traditional industries, things like manufacturing or maybe professional services, business services, the ones who do test personalization have a massive edge because it's not common and there aren't that many people doing it. So you can do stuff that is really simple, that perhaps has high impact site wide, but is not difficult. And we've got a number of clients that you wouldn't imagine would ever have a personalization strategy in, very traditional industries that are doing really well with it. But it takes a forward thinking CEO, digital marketer, CMO to be able to make that difference in those organizations. So those are the main things I'm seeing. And it's we just need to start catching up, and we just need to start building in that culture of experimentation, because we can sit there and think, maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that. It's like, just try something. Try one experiment, because you'll learn something. And I think that's the biggest hurdle we have to come over, is just start.
So I mean with that, right, obviously with doing the testing, doing the experimentation, kind of part of that episode, you talked about learning what software stacks are ideal for your particular industry or for what you're doing. So I want to ask you the question, what kind of software do you use besides your SaaS-based platform that you created that you would not be able to do what you're doing without having access to?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we have our own bespoke ERP that we use, that houses all of our data. So that, from a perspective of interrogating our numbers and knowing exactly where we are, that is invaluable, but it's not one that people are going to know about. So I'll tell you the ones that people are going to know about. So we use Gainsight, and that is really useful for being able to plug in our customer data, see how often they're logging into the portal, what they've done, how effective what they're doing is, how often they're doing it, and which all helps to build up a health score and allows us to predict our customer retention rate, because obviously that's the most important number for us. We also use HubSpot and Salesforce. So we've used HubSpot for a long time. All of our marketing is run through that very effectively. So we're able to build out, a journey all the way through the funnel based on content, but we're also doing a lot of more, focused demand gen comms through that. We do use lead forensics, which and I will say I use that actively. That's one of our sister brands, but that uses the IP data that Webeo uses. I get a daily alert come through to my inbox of all the businesses that visited our website. And I am straight on to sales, because I know from sales which ones are in pipeline, I know which ones aren't. And so those ones go through to marketing, and the SDRs are working those. So I find that incredibly valuable. And then from a personal perspective, I use a productivity app called Sunsama, which I started using about a year ago. And I find that I honestly couldn't live without that. It just allows me to, I used to time block in Outlook, but it's much easier to do it in Sunsama. It also tells you when you're being unrealistic. And you can actually, once you set yourself, right, I'm working on this for 2 hours, you can start and time yourself so you don't go over, because there is that tendency once you get stuck into deep work to to continue, but it allows you to make sure that you switch off from that and go on to something else. So I think those are the key pieces of software that we use every single day. And then obviously as an organization, we're using Snowflake as, you know, from a data perspective. And that is like a key part of what sits behind all of our products.
So, I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Because, I mean, you listed off like some established brands, and in today's market, in today's world, there's this thing called AI, right? And in that particular episode, you kind of talked about understanding what AI means for CRO. So I want you to kind of like dive into that. I mean, does your platform kind of leverage AI technology? Because I mean, it does do some creative writing or rewriting of content. Is AI backing that, or is that just kind of like data points that you've kind of plotted through that huge database?
Yeah, so it's based on, it's not AI driven at the moment. The plan is that it will be, but it is driven by amalgamated data of what is already performing for our customers and best practice. So I do absolutely see a place for AI in MarTech and for marketers. And the way I see AI, especially when we talk about things like, let's talk about ChatGPT as an example. No marketer likes to start off with a blank sheet of paper. That's the most crushing thing. It's like, right, where do I start? So if you're creating a personalized experience, or, you know, or you're writing a blog or whatever, it's a piece of content, if you can use AI to get you started, then I think all the more power to it. I think it's a great tool. I don't believe that there will ever be a replacement for human creativity, though, because all I think it will do is it will allow us as humans to use our brains where they're most valuable, to, you know, to add the creative side of things, or take that data and go, right, how am I going to convey that? But it can give me an idea, it could give me a hypothesis, and give me something to start with. And I think that shortcuts creativity, because once you've got something in front of you, you can change it, you can adjust it, you can make it better. So that is very specifically on ChatGPT. I think, you know, we absolutely see the future of AI being, okay, we can aggregate all of this data that we have across our customer base of what's performing, what works well in one particular industry versus another, and actually use that to create a draft experience for a customer. So they log in when they say, right, well, we want to target this industry, and you know, here's what's important to them, and then that automatically populates a homepage or a pricing page. But again, it's based on insight. It's there is no, without data, AI is ineffective, it doesn't work. But if it can take those reams and reams of data and short circuit something that would have taken an analyst, you know, months to pull together, then great. It just means that our new customers can start off with immediate success.
So based upon everything that we talked about so far, from what I can tell, is that you're half creative and you're half analytical, like you're 50% of each, and you're both hemispheres and in one world, right? Which is particularly hard for a counterpart to kind of comprehend or deal with. So I want to kind of talk about Andy. Is he exactly like you, or is he kind of like the polar opposite, being that he's also an executive?
He is the polar opposite. As in, I think one of the, you know, if you ask me like some words to describe myself, I would say like I'm, you know, really, he is an executive, but he's more operational. Whereas I'm really driven, very impatient, want everything done yesterday, and he is very chilled and calm and the voice of reason. And so that works brilliantly for us as a partnership, because I'm like always, what's next, what's next, what's next, and driving us on. And he's always like, okay, right, but how are we going to get there? So I think about what does Simon Sinek say? You have why people and how people. I would say I'm a why person. I'm like, right, we could do this and we can do that. And he's like a how person. He's more logical and calm and likes to take his time over things, which is complete opposite to me, that it's flying at 100 miles an hour.
So I think you made a hell of a point and kind of opened up a segue to kind of ask you. So if you could then define yourself just using 3 to 5 words, what would those 3 to 5 words be?
I think I said driven, didn't I? So curious, definitely, which I think, is probably one of the things that's helped me most in my career. I'm tenacious. I think that's important for an entrepreneur. It's like, you cannot give up. You need to have good, I'm going to use so many words here. I'm going to use tenacity and resilience at the same time. And let me think. Creative, the one I said at the beginning as well. So yeah, curious, driven, kind. It's really important. Tenacious, creative.
So with all these different facets of who you are right now today, if you had an opportunity to like time travel anywhere in your career, and let's say you have opportunity to time travel back and have a conversation with yourself one-on-one for about 15 minutes, when would you go back to? What would you say to help you become who you are a lot faster?
Right. So I do lots and lots of reading, and there are some amazing books that I have read that have changed my life and made things happen faster for me. And I think I mentioned earlier, obviously I come from a like, traditional like Wolf's family, not particularly entrepreneurial. And one of my early bosses got me into it. Started off with like goal setting, things like that. So goal setting was, probably from like, from early on my career was always there. But there are some things that we can do as individuals that really accelerate us getting to our goals. And a lot of them are tied into, I don't know how much you believe this, but I very firmly believe this, and this really helped. It's to the law of attraction, and using things like affirmations, visualization, being grateful, and having your list of goals and knowing exactly where you want to go. If I started doing all of those things sooner, I think I would have been like a lot like further on. But it was like that. I think the belief part it came later. Maybe that comes with age, but knowing how those things work and the power of the mind in terms of getting you there. Because I was very much like sit with my spreadsheet, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, but I didn't do all of the other incredibly valuable things that fit with that, and I would have started those sooner. So I do a lot of coaching in my organization with some of the younger team, and I'm always saying, like, use these things to your advantage. Of course, yes, have your goals, and of course, yes, know where you're going, but then also think about how you can use these other really powerful tools to get you there faster.
So I think literally kind of goes back into one of your favorite books, The Secret, right? I mean, obviously taking those chapters apart and ideology, like really making them more personalized, right? To make an individual kind of understand each one of those steps to become their greatest self. So I want you to kind of think about, let's say we have a listener, and let's say the listener is young, right? And let's say they're listening to this episode and they're hearing what you're saying. And I want you to kind of use the philosophy of The Secret and kind of give them some words of wisdom to kind of help them on their journey to progress and move forward.
Yeah. So along those lines, I'm gonna recommend the starting point. If I was like talking to a younger listener right now, the book that I would say, and I'm going to talk through the parts of the book that I would say would be most useful for them, would be a book called Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Yeah. And that literally changed my life because I'd read The Secret, and I understood the law of attraction and the power of the mind. I'd read Think and Grow Rich and all of those books. But what the Miracle Morning allowed me to do, and it was when I'd had my third daughter, my third child who was a daughter, was actually put those into a framework, because I would touch on each one of them. Sometimes shall I do some goal setting, whereas the Miracle Morning, what it does is it says 10 minutes of all these things each day, and it talks about the things that are proven to drive success. And Hal talks about what he calls savers. And the first one is silence. So that's meditation. Like, again, I was always one of those people, I can't do meditation. But then when I forced myself to do it, changed my life. Affirmation, visualization, talks about exercise, talks about reading. And the final one is scribing. So writing. So writing down what you're grateful for. And I get up at 5:30 every morning before all my kids get up, and I do all of those things. 10 minutes of each. And again, that was what accelerated it for me, because it became a habit, as opposed to, yeah, I do that sometimes. I do it every single day, only 5 days a week. So young people, you can have the weekend off. But like literally, I've been doing it for 7 years now. And I know that because it was when Cleo was born that I started it, because I was like, I don't know when I'm going to have time to focus on myself at all. And the only way that I could was just to get up super early. And now I love it. I have like, a good hour and a half to just focus on myself and what I want to do for the business and where we're going on all of those things. And it keeps me sane and helps me get to where I want to.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, obviously we have business listeners, and again, you're talking about B2C to B2B. And based upon what you just said, how does someone get in contact with you? Well, if they want to use your SaaS platform, or if they just want to get in contact with you to kind of talk about what you said today.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the best place. I'm really responsive on LinkedIn. I love hearing about new products and services. If someone wants to talk to me about what they've got, or if they want to hear about us, please just reach out to me on LinkedIn, on email, or if you want to talk to us just directly about the product, reach out to us via the website. And you can book, I think you can book I know you can book a Calendly call through the website. So we've always got time to fit those in.
So I want to kind of talk about, I mean, coming from that, like the level of achievements that you've had, right? And I think one of them was you were a judge on Superbrand, a kind of continuing judge. I want you to kind of talk about what is Superbrand and what does it mean to be a judge in that environment? Because some of our Western listeners may not have even heard of Superbrand before.
Yeah, so Superbrands is a very highly valued award in Europe. And there are two types of Superbrands. There are B2C Superbrands. So Superbrands, if you thought of Superbrands and you were thinking of B2C, you might think of brands like Virgin, Coca-Cola, things like that. And for so many marketers, especially in B2C, obviously brand is everything. People buy our product because of how they feel when they are walking around with their can of Coke, when they are flying Virgin or whatever it might be. So the B2C Superbrands is something that European organizations really want to be part of, and to be named, it's a beautiful leather bound book, to be named in Superbrands is huge. So I sit on the judging panel for B2B, And that includes lots of B2B marketers from all different types of organizations. Obviously, it can't include any from the brands that have applied to be considered. It includes lots of consultants, lots of agencies, and we are given a very long list of brands who have applied to be a super brand. And we have to, it's a bit like an NPS score. We have to use it very, very quickly, go through those brands and think about whether we recognize them or not, and then give a view on that brand. Obviously, if we're like, let's say I was a marketing agency and I was working with that brand, I wouldn't be allowed to comment because I would be biased, obviously. So it's just, do you know that brand and what's your view of them? And it takes a little while to go through. And then out of all of the responses for all of those judges, those scores are aggregated to an overall, I suppose what you would call NPS. And then the Superbrands top 10 is announced, but in the actual book itself, it goes all the way through to 100. So getting in there, that's done every single year. It's a really great accolade for a marketing team to have, particularly in B2B, where a brand quite often isn't recognizable, just because of the nature of what they do. Not many people will have heard of them, so having that frame of reference makes a real difference.
So, obviously I kind of pinpointed one of your achievements, but on the scale of all your achievements, which one would you say is your most significant one to date, outside of the kids?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say that one because everyone says that. No. Obviously, so we've built, I think we've built a number of businesses. And obviously when we were at Really B2B, we were acquired, and that was a great experience to go through. I think in terms of achievement, there are two things. There are two real things. One, we've built, and with the team that I've worked with, we've built something that businesses can get true value from, measurable value, and value that goes right through to the bottom line. That makes, you've got to feel proud to get up in the morning and know that your product is doing a good job for the people that invested in it. And when you see that, that is what makes you the most proud. That makes you fly. The second part is what I've been able to do for the people that I have worked with. I have worked with some amazing individuals, some of them that I have known since they were very young, coming in as apprentices, and have invested time in them, taught them what I know, done some coaching and mentorship, and then seeing them absolutely fly. Quite often, I will help them where they're going next in their career. And I think, I look on LinkedIn and I can see what some of the guys who I've worked with previously have done and how they're flying. That's success. When you've made a difference to the people that you've worked with. And aside from what you just said about children, all of that, that's a big part of leaving a legacy, is that you have grown individuals and empowered individuals and given them the confidence to go off and do great things, whether with you or somewhere else. That's the biggest achievement.
So obviously, in those levels of achievements, you're the pinnacle. So I want to kind of reverse those roles, right? If you had an opportunity to sit down 24 hours with someone that potentially you look up to, it could be someone that's dead, someone that's alive, but you have a 24-hour window with this person, who would it be and why?
Yeah, there's not, if I thought about everybody, There is one person who I admire and have admired greatly, who I would find it fascinating to sit with, because I absolutely believe that that individual could teach me some incredible things, incredible tools and techniques that would, change the way I think and change my life. And that would be Nelson Mandela. Because what he did and how he, when he talked about how he spent all of that time when he was in prison just preparing for what was going to happen when he came out, I would find it absolutely fascinating to understand how his mind worked, what level of self-control he had, how he continued to believe that he was going to do what he was going to do when he came out, and also how he also maintained, having been through all of the challenges that he had been through, such an amazing, positive, giving, rich outlook throughout his life. So I would probably want to pick his brains on that, because he changed the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes down to mental fortitude, he's probably pound for pound, probably one of the heavyweight champions. Like, when you think about things that people go through and survive and then come back out on top, he's definitely one of the legends in that space. So I think today, like, you delivered so much different insight on marketing, and we kind of did like a roller coaster about personal information and life, and also your business as well, which is a successful business that if anyone is into marketing and strategy, definitely you want to check her out and check out her platform. So going into closing, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of my show. You're a new podcaster, so now Uncaged is your show, and I'm now your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh, yeah, I probably have a number, actually. The first one, obviously, you're a fascinating individual, and being that I am a voracious reader, I would love to know what book you would recommend for me to read next.
Wow. I mean, there's so many different books, right? I mean, and I always make this recommendation because this is the recommendation as far as like taking action, right? So I would say The 5 Second Rule. Have you read that book yet?
I haven't read it. No, I follow Mel Robbins,
Mm.
and I've watched a number of her videos, but I haven't read the book. I understand a bit about the premise,
Mm.
but if you recommend that, that's going to go on my list next.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a book about, I mean, it's as simple as 5 seconds, and it kind of sounds cliche, but when you actually apply it, it kind of changes the activities of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and why you're going to do it. And it kind of removes the fear factor. You have 5 seconds to be fearful of whatever it is, and then you have to take action on it. And as long as you kind of stick to that ritual, you can kind of achieve and keep growing and moving forward, because nothing's going to hold you back longer than 5 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. And then thinking about the podcast, and obviously the fact that you've had so many so many guests during your time, can you tell me about one of the funniest moments that you had?
So we've deemed this episode the Howard Stern episode because it's kind of a little bit raunchier than what we're used to talking about.
Yeah,
but
okay.
it was an episode where we was talking about the same question I asked you, like, who would you like to spend 24 hours with? And the guest had said he wanted to spend 24 hours with Zoe Kravitz. And so it was kind of surprising to a certain extent. He was like, hey, Zoe Kravitz, she's an actress, okay, but why? And then he kind of went into what him and Zoe Kravitz can do with the lights off.
Oh my goodness.
Completely hilarious, but it became a legendary episode, and now it's known as Howard Stern episode.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, I haven't really thought about it from that perspective when you asked the question, but yeah, I can see why that would appeal to someone. But I just imagined having a decent conversation, because I'm sure exactly what he wanted to do. Oh,
I don't think
you.
that's what he wanted to do at all. I don't think he wanted to talk about much of it. Well, do you have any other questions?
I would like to know, similar to what the question that you asked me, because I'm always interested in this, is what is it in your career that you are most proud of?
Wow. I would say once I made that conscious decision, and this is past me having a stroke, this is past me starting Boss and Cage, past me kind of creating a legacy, it was like, what would it really look like for me to kind of take all the content that I'm creating and amplify that? What would it look like as a media network versus just as a podcast? And once I kind of took that 5 second rule and jumped into it, it was kind of like now I have like that global vision for what I am actually doing, why I'm doing it, and how I'm going to be able to get in contact with millions of people, whether I'm alive or dead, just period, be able to influence that many people down the road.
Yeah, powerful stuff. Yeah, because I mean, you have, like you said, you've done so much. But I suppose where you are now is like, you know exactly where you're going and you know what's next, and you've got that ability, you've got that voice to the world now, haven't you? Which is completely unique.
Yeah. I mean, for me right now, we're just kind of like how do I dibble in media on a larger scale? So literally a couple of weeks ago, we started an internet radio station that's based upon the principles of what we do on Boston Cage, where we're infusing it with music. So we're taking some of the entertainment, but still with the education. I mean, yesterday we released, I think it was about maybe 15 to 20 different songs that were taking original president addresses, original speeches from like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and infusing it with like beats and music behind them. So you can kind of
Yeah,
to it, learn, but at the same time, continue to work and continue to enjoy your day.
yeah, brilliant. Oh, I might have to have a little listen.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate it. I think that, you dropped a lot of golden nuggets today. And I think everyone that's listened to this particular episode, this is an episode that you kind of have to rewind back and listen to and take the notes of the particular strategies that we talked about. Because again, personalizing anything will have your conversions 10 times higher than they are currently right now. So I definitely appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much. Look forward to catching up, hopefully again soon.
Yes. S.A. Grant, over and out.